Good morning, it's Friday morning on the farm. I'm right at the top end of block A and I'm going to use these pallets to start building my compost bins. So what I'll do is I'll crack on with it, and once they're up and running I'll explain my thinking behind it all. You saw in last week's vlog that I'm not particularly great at DIY, so wish me luck. So I'm in the area of the plot that's called, I'm nicknaming the hub. It's kind of where I've been having my compost and wood chips dropped off. It's right next to the gate and entrance to block A, which will be the gate and entrance to block A and B eventually when the fence goes up properly around both blocks. The idea is that this area becomes sort of like the hub for the whole farm. So to start off with, seeing as we're pretty small scale at the moment, I'll be putting up a 6 by 4 foot shed. Over here, I've just told you that I'm setting up my compost bins that I've kind of finished for now, but I'll let you have a look at those in a minute. But yeah, the idea of this area is this is where I get a lot of my materials delivered. This will be where I park the cars and the vans next to. And yeah, this will be the sort of focal point for the whole farm. And then there'll be blocks coming away from this area as and when I decide to extend. So let me show you what I've done with the compost bins, how I can see it working and how I can see us using them as and when we start producing food on the farm. And yeah, we'll take it from there. So let me talk you through what I've done here. This furthest away from the block is a little crate that I've inherited. It's just got my spare tubing in at the moment, but this is going to be lined eventually with some of the spare fencing, and this is going to be where I make my leaf and grass cutting mulch. So this sort of crate here is going to be specifically for leaves and grass cuttings to start their breakdown journey here, but effectively just get them broken down into as smaller bits as possible and use it for leaf mulch to mulch the beds. It will be holding all the leaves that are starting to fall now and that will continue to fall over autumn, and then as and when I get things in at the farm, I'll use this as a covering to kind of suppress the weeds and lock in some of that goodness over the winter months. Everyone will probably know that compost production, or your own compost production, can be really important and a huge money saver on the farm. Now, not for 1 minute thinking that I can produce all of my own compost and not have to buy any in. I think that's an unrealistic target, but it would be stupid if I don't turn my green waste as and when I start creating it into my very own compost, and I'll know 100% what's going in it. So to start off with, I've just created, if I just walk away a little bit, this really simple 2-bay system. I'm actually left the pallet off the front one, off the second one on purpose, because nothing will be going in that just yet. We'll be focusing on putting all the green waste in the very first bay, and it is right next to the block, so you don't have to come out of the block to put your green waste in. You can just sort of chuck it over the fence. So again, when you think of productivity and time saving, that will help. So yeah, the idea is that we fill it up, the first bay up with all the waste, and then as and when I need to turn that waste, it'll be turned into the second bay, and we'll keep that process going. Whether I will stick to 2 bins or extend, time will tell. I think realistically, for something as big as I'm trying to create, I'm going to need a hell of a lot more sort of compost bins or areas to store my green waste. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking about Charles Dowding and how he has his compost bins really central to all of his production area. And obviously this is heavily at one end of the farm. So I might start with these 2 here, and then as I develop more blocks, I might put, some compost beds every couple of blocks, or I might just move them bang into the middle of the farm as and when I extend. But by doing 2, it gets me going, it gets stuff underway, it gives me a really solid start, and yeah, a great place to sort of start to produce my own compost. Sort of last bit on the compost bins or the compost bays. There's a few decisions that I've got to decide to do. I don't know whether I'm going to cover them permanently, like with a bit of a structure, or just use weed membrane or some some covering just to keep the moisture off it during the winter. I don't know if I'm going to line the insides of the compost bins yet with something. I've still got to make that decision. I never have done on the allotment, and it always seems to work fine, but I don't know whether it would speed up if I sort of lined it again with some black weed membrane. And finally, as I said, I've got to decide whether they're going to stay here at all, but it's a good start. You've probably worked it out, but I just built these compost bins using some donated pallets. So thanks to Rory, who is my wife's cousin, for sourcing me these pallets for free. And also this sort of ready-made crate that will be, as I said, the leaf mulch. Right, we're absolutely flying through the jobs today, so I'm going to put in a little border right down the end of block A here, next to where I'm going to put a path up to the shed, and I'm going to just stick some perennial herbs in there, which I bought yesterday from the garden centre. So let's crack on. Okay, well, I'm having a quick break on the farm. A couple of you have asked for a bit of a rundown of what I've got sown or what I've sown in the last couple of videos. I don't think I've been 100% crystal clear on what it is that I've done. So here's what I've got in the either in seed trays or in the ground so far. So start with in the ground. It was just some beetroots that had left over that were sown months ago. They're just testing the soil. They've at least doubled in size, if not tripled in size, in the ground. We also sowed a few seeds in the ground just to fill in some of the gaps that we'd created in the row, and they've germinated lovely. So no problems there with the compost and the ground that we've put in, which is a good sign. And then as far as in seed trays, it's just winter hardy crops. So I've got some winter density and 4 seasons lettuce. I've sown some rocket, or arugula if you're watching this from America or anywhere else. I doubt you are, I'm not that popular. What else have I got? Lots of different kinds of kale. So I've got some Cavolo Nero kale, which is one of my favourites. I'm trying Red Russian for the first time, which is meant to be a little bit sweeter. And now I've got a next session of beetroot, which will be fine if I can get it in the ground in the next couple of weeks. I've got some radishes, which will be fine this time of year. I've got some turnips, some pak choi, and yeah, that's about it. So they're all in seed trays, been sown over the last couple of weeks. So the lettuce will be the first that will be ready to go out in little plugs into the field. That should be in a couple of vlogs time, or a couple of weeks time from me recording this. And yeah, so it's all really an experiment for me here. I'm just looking at what grows well over the winter, so I don't put myself under too much pressure in the spring. Testing the soil, seeing what it's like farming on a bigger scale, because obviously, you know, I'm talking seed trays with 200 plants in some instances, like the radishes are multi-sown in trays of 200 plugs, and 3 radishes per cell, so you're looking at over 600 radishes. Just getting to grips with farming on a bigger scale. And yeah, just learning my practice over winter with a few veggies and crops that will survive. So I've got no way to get rid of these. These will be either given to Sanctus, the charity, or I'll eat them myself. This is all gearing up to start ready for next spring. So the first actual selling crops that I will put in the ground will be sort of like the beginning of October, and there'll be my overwinter onions and overwinter garlic. So maybe even some broad beans. So yeah, I hope that helps. I hope that clears things up a little bit. I know I'm a bit of a rambler and it's sometimes hard to follow, but yeah, that's what I've got either in the ground or in seed trays at the moment. Excellent news, the shed is up and I am properly excited to have this on the farm. Not only does it mean that I don't have to have a boot full of tools pretty much all week, and we can get our car back to what it should be, it means that, you know, I might even get the chance to have a cup of tea. Might get one of those little camping stoves, just keep it in there, just to make things a little bit nicer for people when they come and volunteer. And then over the winter I'll have some shelter from the rain and wind, I guess. But yeah, super happy to have it up. And I'll give you a quick spin round now, but just a massive thanks to Nick from Seedcraft on Instagram. Go and check him out. He came and put it up for me. He knows what he's doing. It would have taken me hours, it only took him a couple. And yeah, couldn't be happier. I've put the shed in, it's a potting shed first of all, so you've got one whole side that's got glass panels, and then you've got a couple of glass panels either side of the shed. So I've put the shed in, you know, parallel. For OCD reasons, it's had to be parallel to the blocks. That's just my thing. I think it looks smart like that, but it's as south facing as it will get. So right over this shot shoulder where I am at the moment is south facing, so the sun will sort of bake those front windows all throughout the day, which is fantastic, because then it becomes a useful potting shed and a useful place to store and harden off seedlings and bits like that. It's right next to the gate, so really easy access for and right in amongst everything, so that it's usable as well as looks great. The guys at Power Shed did me a really good deal on this shed, so if you are in the market for one, go and check them out. But this is it, this is the shed. It's as most sheds are, it's only been up a couple of days. It's full of rubbish already, but it needs some organising, and I've still got to put the potting tables up. So these bits here are the potting tables. There's a bit of cladding left to go back on when I've finished trimming all the felt off the top of the roof. But yeah, this is the shed. It's just a little 6x6 foot shed. There's not much going on at the moment apart from leftover work. So the potting tables will go obviously under the windows. There's two, one to go below each window. So like I said, you can use that really for all my seedlings as and when I need to. And then it's got this cracking view of the farm. So when I'm sheltering from the wind and having a cup of tea, I can look out the windows and enjoy the view and spot any weeds that I need to pull. Beautiful, great shed. The other thing I will say about this shed, and watch out for later vlogs for this, it's got this massive, great big flat back, and that's where I've got to trim, up the top there's where I've got to trim the felt left to do and put some more of the sort of cladding boards up. But it backs onto sort of my compost area, water sort of thing, supplies over there. So this is really becoming that hub that I talked about of where everything will get done. And the plan I've got here, and another reason I haven't cut anything or put anything up at the top here yet, is I might extend sort of a little bit of a roof or a little bit of shelter that comes out this way from the back of the shed, and then put some waterproofing sort of plastic on the back of the shed, and then build a root washing station at the back of it, so that this can be my area where first of all harvest some water off the roof of the shed, but also have a very small root washing table behind the back of it, just as the sort of first point of call to wash down all the vegetables when they come out the field. But watch this space, I haven't fully designed that yet. You know, things change, but yeah, like I said, a really well made, well structured, super easy to put up if you know what you're doing. But yeah, a real top quality shed to have on the allotment, which for now, when I'm only working 2 blocks or maybe a couple more before next spring, is a perfect size for me to use and utilise the space. Okay, so I'm going to take this opportunity to just talk to you a little bit about how I'm going to be dealing with weeds on the farm and how I plan to sort of combat the weed pressure that is inevitably going to catch up with me at some point on this plot of land. So I'll give you a spin round and look at some of the challenges that I'm up against and what my really simple plan to combat that. Okay, so you can see that I am sort of pretty open for wind germination of seeds. You've got some grasses and bits growing in the field sort of adjacent to where I'm building my blocks. You've got some weed pressure right on the edge, but sort of less than a metre away from the corners of my blocks. So that's going to, in the wind, inevitably cause some weed pressure, and you can already see that some of them are creeping in. This is a thistle type weed, which I've got to deal with. You can see on the uncultivated areas that, you know, these weeds have already started germinating. It looks like a carpet of green on the cultivated, I should say the area that I haven't blocked out yet. But the positive thing is that those are all annual weeds. That's one kind of weed really, and it's an annual weed germination. So if I can suppress that down and deal with those, we shouldn't have any problems going forward. The great thing that I have got going for me in this area and on all my blocks as I go up is there's no perennial weed pressure, or very, very little perennial weed pressure, which means sort of looking after the weed pressure on these blocks is really simple, and it just means regular weeding. So there's 2 main things that I'll be doing to combat the weeds on the blocked areas, and it's really simple, and that is I'll be using tarpaulin to cover the beds when they're not in use. That will stop any new seeds blowing in and germinating within the bed structure. And secondly, it will just be regular weeding. So I've sort of already fallen into a habit that my first job every weekend is to go over these beds with a really fine rake and just rake out all those small little seedlings that have germinated already, and pull those out as you go along with the rake, and maybe just get 1 or 2 out by hand that have already got too big. The most important thing is that we deal with those on a regular basis, and that we don't fall into the trap of letting them get any higher than maybe 1 centimetre high. If they get any higher than 1 centimetre high on a scale this big, you're going to lose the battle, you're going to get behind, and then they're going to start seeding themselves, and that is the worst thing that can happen for any kind of annual weed, is that they self-seed in all of your beds, and then you've got that again to deal with in the next cycle, in the next season. So it's a really simple technique. JM40 is huge on this. We're dealing with weeds pretty much before we can even see them by disturbing the top layer of the soil, but I reiterate, only the tiny sort of like 1 centimetre top with a fine rake. I'm actually using a leaf rake to do it at the moment because the weed pressure's so low. Just doing that once a week or once a fortnight, depending on what time of year it will be, to really keep on top of the weeds. And yeah, we shouldn't have a major weed issue in these beds. Like I said earlier, the massive bonus is that I'm only dealing with annuals, perennial weeds. If I was dealing with a field full of perennial weeds, then I would perhaps have had to layer my beds with cardboard and really give them a much thicker mulch of compost to give them that head start. But fingers crossed, with a combination of tarpaulin and regular weeding, we should be able to stay on top of it.